Welcome to Breaking the News Plus on this Wednesday night. We're going to swim in the warm waters of politics because that's just like where we want to stay cozy on the Plus. Joining me, Amy Fredrickson, formerly known as Amy Koch, my friend and Republican strategist in all things smart and plugged into politics. Amy, there are a couple things I want to talk to you about tonight. The first is what a lot of people don't pay attention to when they're not kind of in the know within party politics, and that is the Republicans had a straw poll with the candidates for eyeing the governor's seat opening next fall, and the straw poll winner, businessman Kendall Qualls. That surprised me.
Oh, well, so it didn't surprise me as much, Shanna, but I'd love to. So a couple things about the straw poll, first of all, I just want to point out, it's early, and the last person who won the straw poll was Paul Gazelka, then Senate Majority Leader, who went on to do incredibly mediocre in the sort of Republican endorsement and primary process. So I want to just kind of lay that out for expectation. But Kendall Qualls ran 4 years ago. Mm-hmm. He narrowly lost the endorsement to Scott Jensen. Scott Jensen went on to be the Republican nominee against Governor Walz. Kendall Qualls has been working within the Republican Party for, going on 5 years now, right? If you count that race, plus this, the last 4 years. And so he is a very known person to the state central delegates. These are the insider's insider. This is even more insidery than the endorsement. So not a surprise with Kendall, but there are a couple other folks that did surprise me. And cannot be ignored. So Kendall was expected, but I understand that there was sort of there were promises made because he'd been in and there were commitments to vote for him long before other folks got in, right? So most prominently, the second place was Speaker Lisa Demuth. That surprised me only that she did so well, given that she just jumped in the race. And that shows so in my mind, she's sort of the front runner because she has not been working this, and she just soared to the top, really, within a vote or two of Kendall Qualls. And then, third was Mike Lindell, which is a perennial disappointment to me. I don't know who wants Mike Lindell to run. It would be the most disastrous disaster. I guess Governor Walz would like Kendall or would like Mike Lindell to run. But other than Mike Lindell and Governor Walz, I don't know who wants Mike Lindell to run, except a few people. So he came in third, but he's got a lot of name ID and, whatever. So, and then the attorney, and I think we've talked about him before, Chris Mattel, came in fourth, but with almost the same amounts of votes as Mike Lindell. And again, like the Demuth vote, a bit of a surprise to me that he did so well, given that he really did not work this at all, and basically kind of showed up and gave a speech. So.
How many people are we talking about that are involved in this straw poll within the party?
300, 350. It's very small. And as I said, it's they're called the state central delegates. So they come from the endorsement process, but they're even elected beyond that. It's a couple thousand that go to an endorsing convention. This is sort of the people that run that, the sort of the goings on of the day-to-day goings on of the MNGOP.
Okay. So to summarize, basically from your expertise, Kendall Qualls, not a surprise because he's been around these insiders of the party for a long time now. He has already run before. He's probably was the first to declare in this race on the Republican side. He has been face to face with these kinds of Republicans that have these votes for years.
Yeah. And by the way, the big kind of loser in this was the former Republican nominee, Senator Jensen, Dr. Jensen. He did abysmally in this. So that's something where he's going to either have to super retool his campaign or maybe drop out. So.
Yeah, do we see any ramifications like that from a straw poll if they don't even bat an eye? Because Scott Jensen didn't do well, nor did Kristen Robbins.
Yeah, neither did Kristen Robbins, state rep from Maple Grove area. Well, I think they stand for a while, but it can have ramifications, particularly around kind of fundraising and then ongoing endorsement support, right? People start to sort of gather steam or not. Now, it's not over because, as I said, Paul Gazelka won the last one. But especially for those, the top, like not in the top four, call it, those folks have to sort of kind of think about like, how much longer can I go on with the campaign? What do I need to do to retool, or do I just drop out?
Yeah, and to remind folks watching, spring is the endorsement time from the party, and then the primary for the candidates who are still around. Some will stay in, even if they don't get the endorsement. If not all of them would stay in, and then they run for a primary in late summer, August, I think it is. So can we move on to a name? I know you and I have talked about a person I've talked to on Breaking the News several times, a person very well known, high name ID, who is reportedly flirting with jumping into the race for Tina Smith's soon-to-be vacated U.S. Senate seat. That is a race that has been dominated really by Democrats, Peggy Flanagan and Angie Craig going at it from the Democratic side, trying to win Tina's seat. And the Republican candidate has been weak, Royce White, if that's the kindest thing we can say about that candidacy. And then you have a couple of others in the race, but really haven't made any fundraising goals, haven't really done much. So the person I'm talking about, Michelle Tafoya, former NFL sideline reporter, well known within GOP circles, well known outside of them. For her to enter that race, would that be someone that Republicans in Minnesota would get behind, or is it still a safe Democratic seat?
It's not a safe Democratic seat. Any kind of statewide race, everybody thinks Minnesota is so deeply blue. It's just simply not. Now, you have a high population in the metro area that tends to be blue, but but greater Minnesota is deeply red. So if you can actually pick up sort of the undecideds and the moderates in the suburbs, you can do well. Michelle Tafoya is one of those candidates, as you said, tremendous name ID. I think a real ability to raise money even on a national level. She's not just known in Minnesota. She's been a reporter, a sports reporter for, I don't know, a couple decades.
Yeah, she was on Monday Night Football. It was as big as it gets in terms of sideline.
It's as big as it gets, right? So she has an ability, I think, to bring in and draw attention. And as you said, the field is essentially empty on the GOP side. So it's not too late. The only thing will be is, she's going to have to get in and really raise some money. And then it's going to be a very interesting battle on the Democrat side to see who comes out of that endorsement and eventually, I assume, a primary. But that's going to have the Democrats kind of locked in a battle. So if Tafoya could come through the endorsement or just, I don't know. I don't know if she'd go straight to the primary, but without a real opponent that's raising money, she would get a lot of attention and airtime and have a lot of time to sort of just continue to build her name ID and run her campaign. If I were her, and even if I went to a primary, I'd run that race like I'm running in the general. I would just run to have name out there, to garner support, to raise money, and then, be ready for whoever comes out, which were both strong candidates on the Democrat side between Lieutenant Governor Flanagan and Congresswoman Angie Craig.
And you and I have talked before about perhaps it's been lack of support from the Republican National Committee about why there isn't a really strong Republican jumping into a race for the U.S. Senate. Those are big seats that don't come up all the time.
Right. And it's been besides the fact that Republicans haven't won since 2006 statewide, those U.S. Senate seats, which, by the way, in my lifetime, were both Republican. I can faintly remember Boschwitz and Durenberger. Reed Boschwitz is still alive and kicking and doing his good work. So it's not been that long ago, but they've been seats that we've just almost entirely seated, except for very few exceptions. I would say I helped run the Housley campaign to fill the sort of quickly vacant Al Franken seat. Now, 2018 was a terrible year for Republicans, but other than that, we just really haven't had strong candidates, whether it's Klobuchar running, and she's such a juggernaut. It's just been a space that we have pretty much not touched. And I think a lot of national folks think, well, it's Minnesota. That's a blue state. And it's just not true. When you're here, you understand that this state is, you know, sometimes purple, sometimes light red, sometimes light blue, and the right candidate can win the day because we're a state of ticket splitters and common sense and super educated voters.
So do you think Michelle Tafoya should run?
I think I'd like to see her jump in the race. Yeah.
All right. I have one more quick question for you. This is way down the rabbit hole of politics, but there is no secret that Governor Tim Walz is in a situation he has not been in before in terms of how he is being, you know, the reporting on fraud that we've been doing for 5 years has picked up a second wind with this current Trump administration kind of jumping in and the national media jumping in on stories that we've already been reporting. Do you see any scenario where Governor Walz bows out of this race and one of those Senate candidates, say, and Angie Craig or Lieutenant Governor Flanagan goes to the governor's race? Or is that just crazy?
I just think it's difficult. Think about President Biden, right? President Biden, everybody knew he shouldn't run. I mean, I thought it was quite obvious. And then you sort of heard we did the State of the State and people said, oh, look, he's just fine. And I thought, he is not okay. Dean Phillips, our own Congressman Dean Phillips, decided to run against him to sort of say somebody should. And he was just excoriated. It's really hard for a seated president or a seated governor, for anyone to say to them, no, you shouldn't. It's just, you sort of have your circle of advisors, and your circle of advisors want to see you continue. You've got your family, and I think that Governor Walz's family and his wife and his kids are very supportive of whatever he wants to do. And of course, for a while, there just weren't, a lot of Republicans in the race, right? It was Kendall Walz who ran last time. It was, Scott Jensen who ran last time. But now there's some pretty, heavy hitters jumping in this race. But how do you back down? I just don't see it. And I don't see, there's not some big party apparatus that's going to say, no, you need to step down. There just isn't. That isn't really how politics works. You could have donors not giving money, but how are they not going to give money to a seated governor? They're going to. So.
Right. Different situation from in the Biden situation, there was just, America watched that debate that really kind of put everybody back on their heels. Like, oh, he actually isn't ready, capable.
Right. It was an extraordinary moment. Right. It was an extraordinary moment that he even got to the debates in June. And my goodness, an early debate, thank goodness, right? Or you didn't had no chance. You'd have gotten to, if the debates had been in August and September, as they usually are, we wouldn't have known until then. But it was that debate that was just so front and center and in everybody's face that there just could not be any argument any longer.
All right, what's the story to watch in politics, in your opinion, in the state of Minnesota in the next couple of days?
Well, I think it's the Tafoya that we touched on. The will she or won't she? We may start to get more information on that. But again, it's not a huge rush for her to get in before the holidays. And then I hope that everybody will go away and just enjoy their families for a while. I hope that there isn't a lot of big stories. Come on, let's have some nice Christmas. I got a new husband. I got a new bonus son. I got my daughter having twins. I'm hoping that it's quiet.
Amy Frederickson, the happy newlywed, now just passive aggressively telling me not to call her anymore. Leave her alone until 2026.
Can you believe my daughter's having twins, Jana?
Oh,
by the way?
So much that we're going to start a parenting podcast and dip into politics on the side. That's what we'll do next year.
Okay, deal.
Thanks for watching us on The Plus tonight. We'll see you next time. Take care.